to be honest, let's face it, you are one of the comparatively few in the liberty movement who is openly endorsing Kamala Harris for president. I do know that after this debate, you did have a public statement along the lines of, the death of MAGA at the hands of an intelligent,
Yeah.
accomplished black woman is the epitome of poetic justice.
Yep.
I mean, I know that these are roughly your words.
That is it.
And yep. And in that case, considering that, if we're being honest here, a lot of people are going to hear that statement and they're going to roll their eyes at it. What is your response to them? What is the case that you would make overall for voting for Kamala Harris?
That's a great question. I think that the case that I make is very, very simple. Donald Trump has abdicated his oath. He's violated his oath to the Constitution. He is a threat to the Constitution because of that. He has authoritarian impulses. And he has objectively failed on every measure that we would hold a pro-liberty candidate to, like hard stop. Trump, really the reason. So I think that one thing I'll say is this: my decision to support Kamala Harris is actually less about policy, although I think you could make a policy argument to say that Kamala has more, say, liberal policies than Trump does. And it's mainly due to that basic fact. When I look at a presidential candidate, I say, first and foremost, will they uphold their oath to the Constitution of the United States? If the answer is yes on both sides, then we can have a conversation about policy and nuance and then get into the weeds. I have never voted for a Democrat in my entire life. I voted actually libertarian every year since I was 18 years old. I wasn't a member of the Libertarian Party until like 2016, but I voted for a libertarian every year since 18.
Smart man.
2012. Huh?
Smart man.
Yeah. And so the reason I made the decision this year is because I looked at the candidates and I said, can both these candidates uphold their oath to the Constitution? After January 6th, I do not believe the answer is a yes for Trump. And so I think that we're in a moment where there's kind of a moral choice to be made, where we have to say, it is of utmost importance that we do not allow someone like him to get near the Oval Office again. Like, that is a critical moment in history that we just have to make a decision and make some concessions. I mean, Trump, this is all out in the public. He drafted plans to replace legitimate electors with fake electors. He tried to push this through. His team had plans to go in and across the country and seize voting machines. He objectively called to terminate the Constitution, all the rules of its Constitution. He pressured Pence for months to violate his constitutional duty to certify the electors sent by the states. And when he didn't, he incited insurrection that called for Pence to be hung. I mean, the insurrectionists were hundreds of feet away from Pence. What would have happened if they would have gotten to him? Like, it would have been a very different day, right? I can't look at that situation and go, well, we need to just have a conversation about policy because that is the bare minimum that I come to expect from leaders. So I look at this and I go, now it's time for us to, I'm going to put those differences that I have with Kamala aside. And I think we should back the person that has the most likely opportunity to make sure this dude cannot ever get in your power. I actually think it's very important that it's a blowout election, because if it's another close election, there's going to be a lot of violence. There's going to be more schemes to call the election fake. This could be a constitutional crisis in the making. So I think it's very important that it's just a complete blowout against him. And then we can get back to an environment, like a normal political environment, where we have candidates that are kind of like, at least have a willingness to uphold their oath. And then we can actually start doing the work to reform the parties from the inside and actually move things in the right direction. That is truly my reasoning. Like, that's truly the core of my reasoning. There are things that Trump did, and this would have been my argument against him. This was my argument for why I didn't vote for him in 2016 and 2020. There are many things that he did that were completely out of step with pro-liberty ideas. I mean, like, he shut down the economy during COVID and then attacked governors that were trying to reopen the economy. He killed more civilians in drone strikes than any other president before him, including Biden. He ended all the rules that Obama set up to, like, transparently report them. So we don't actually know the scope of the civilian deaths. That's through independent reporting. He didn't end any wars. He passed more gun control than any president in modern history, printed more money than any president in modern history. He wants to expand civil asset forfeiture and give universal qualified immunity to every police officer. He wants to round up immigrants, 12 million immigrants, and put them in camps and deport them. I mean, you talk. There's only way you do that is going door to door with police. And then, we know, I think you and I do, Evan, that money printing does lead to inflation. He printed half of all the dollars in existence in 2021. Half of all the dollars ever printed were printed in 2021. And Donald Trump signed his names on the checks, sent it to everyone. So I look at like his record, and then I look at his violation of his oath, and I go, this guy's just, there's no upside. There's no upside to him as a candidate, not only policy-wise, but like we need to make sure that he's not a part of the national conversation anymore. So that's my reasoning.
Many do also point out the idea that, the COVID-19 pandemic has also greatly, skewed certain inflation figures towards the end of Trump's presidency, as well as at the beginning of Biden's as well.
Yeah, for sure. And Biden spent a lot of money too, which I'm sure aided in inflation, driving it up when he took over. So I can't say he didn't do any, spending there. There were more checks, more spending.
Sure. And, in this case, we know full well Kamala Harris is not going to be ending the Federal Reserve, obviously.
No.
So, and in fact, she's also had a bit of a lack of transparency regarding her platform. I do know that certain people have recommended to her to actually not even reveal her plans until after the election. But in this case, do you think that Kamala Harris is going to be able to tackle the current inflation crisis? Why or why not?
I think that she'll do a better job of tackling the inflation crisis than Trump will. I think I can argue that very strongly. So there's two reasons why. The first reason is her budget proposal is adds 5 times less to the deficit than Trump's does. And that's a lot to do to the fact that he's trying to implement these universal tariffs. I mean, anyone that understands economics understands that a 10% tariff on everything imported to the United States would be like the most inflationary policy you could devise. I mean, with the exception of sending checks to everyone and doubling the federal budget overnight, 10% added to the price of every import would be one of the most inflationary policies I could imagine, like, period. So I don't think Trump has a solution to address inflation. I think I don't think he even, based on the debate, I don't even think he understands what a tariff even is. Like, I'm shocked he didn't say that, but like he had said that the countries pay tariffs, like as though that money doesn't get bled back to the American consumer who's going to have the price increase of the product to cover the cost of the tariff when the person imports it. So that's incredibly inflationary. Harris's budget is adds 5 times less to the deficit than Trump's does. And one of the things that I've been happy to see, and I don't know if you've read this yet, Evan, but I mean, Harris did release her policy platform like a couple days ago.
Oh, yes, I was looking at that. Yes, that's right.
So there's some stuff in there that's not great. Like we talk about price gouging laws, price gouging rules, which I don't think address the core supply and demand problems the economy lead to shortages. There was stuff in there around housing, around like giving checks or giving credit to everyone who bought a house, which I think would also do the same thing, which is add way more cost to the housing market. But there's a lot of other things in there that are great, specifically around housing. This idea that we're going to tear down rules and regulations and the federal government is going to do what they can to work with local municipalities to like reduce rules and regulations that make it harder to build more homes. We know that the way you fix the housing crisis is by increasing the supply of housing. That's how you fix the problem. The fact that she understands that, that is like one of the number one inflationary drivers right now in the economy is the price of housing. It's just going through the roof. And the fact that she's talking about that is a huge win. She did also talk about cutting taxes for middle-class families, which I think that's great. Cutting taxes is awesome. And I think that's a fantastic thing. And so this kind of pivot I'm seeing from the Democratic Party where they're kind of, it seems to me like they're moderating a bit and embracing more of the supply side voices rather than these kind of progressive economic protectionist voices, these economic populists. That's a really good thing for the economy, for driving down inflation, for fixing real problems rather than making them worse. And while I see Kamala moderating on that, I see Trump doing the opposite. He's like, he's going for universal tariffs. He's going for economic protectionism. And he even was at a rally a couple weeks ago talking about how his number one goal is to protect single family zoning. I mean, this was in this whole Project 2025 thing that he said he doesn't know about. I mean, single family zoning, the idea that you can only build these single unit. That's a huge driver to the cost of housing. And if we're going to like protect that at all costs without building higher density, that's not going to reduce pricing for anyone. That's going to make things way worse. So, I mean, that's like artificially controlling the supply of housing in order to help your personal investments at the cost of like poor young people that are coming out of college that need to be able to afford to buy a home. They can't do that because of these rules and regulations like single family zoning and other things. So I don't know. I actually think she has I really do objectively believe that she has a better plan to address the deficit, to address inflation, and to address some of the supply problems that we have in the economy that are leading to the inflation problems that we have.